Maximum alert in DMV. Washington is on the brink of collapse, and only you have the antidote. The offensive line is a war zone with hidden injuries. Why is Quinn lying about recovery times? 5 key players bleed in the salary cap, including a Pro Bowler Peters wants to cut in August. And JJ Watt just brought nuclear pressure with the uniforms. This is not a drill. If you don't act today, you will lose. Home 1. The names of the 5 doomed to go in the next cut. 2. The real return date of the injured. Spoiler, it's not for week 1. And 3. The deadly trap hidden in the contracts that could cost us Daniels. Do you think these changes are just cosmetic? Watt just lit the fuse of a revolution. But there's one fact no one knows. The 6th player on the cut list. And it's directly linked to Deebo's next move. Would you risk missing this by not liking? Subscribe before the video hits 10,000 views and unlock the keys to the Commander's apocalypse. Time is ticking against you. But before we get to that nuclear bomb, let me tell you something that keeps me up at night thinking about the future of our offensive line. Sam Cosmi, the guard who got injured in that epic victory against the Lions, still has no return date. And when Dan Quinn says he's meeting all recovery goals but can't give a specific date, I tell you that makes me worry. Remember how our offensive line became a wall protecting Jaden Daniels in those playoffs. Cosmi wasn't just another player there. He was a fundamental part of that chemistry. The man was playing the best football of his career, and suddenly he gets injured at the most critical moment. And now Quinn is talking about competition between Josh Connolly, our first-round tackle, and Nate Herbig, the veteran we brought from Philadelphia. Do you think it's a coincidence that Peters brought in Herbig right after Cosmi got injured? I think Peters saw this coming. The reality is that Quinn is being smart with his words. He says he loves the competition they have right now, that it's going to be a battle to see who wins the 5 starting spots. But between the lines, do you know what he's saying? That he can't depend on Cosmi returning to the same level. And here is what worries me the most. What if that injury affects his mobility? What if he loses a step? Cosmi has had injury problems before, and in the offensive line, especially protecting. A mobile quarterback like Daniels, you can't afford to have doubts about your player's health. Quinn is closely monitoring his offensive linemen, and you know what that tells me? That he's preparing contingencies, because if Cosmi can't return to his previous level, he needs Connolly and Herbig ready to fill that void. And the pressure on these players is immense, because protecting Daniels is literally the most important job on the entire roster. But if that has you thinking, wait until you hear what's really happening with these 5 players who are fighting for their careers. Because this isn't just about contracts. This is about the future of our franchise and the decisions that will define whether we remain contenders or return to mediocrity. Adam Peters knew exactly what he was doing when he structured this roster. He gambled on 1-year contracts to create urgency so players would come hungry. And it worked. We reached the championship game. But now the bill has come due. And we have 48 free agents next year. 40! Do you know what that means? That Peters is playing 3-dimensional chess while other teams are playing checkers. But here's the crazy part. 5 specific players are on the brink, and their destinies will determine not just their future, but the future of our entire franchise. Let's start with Noah Igbinoghene, and let me tell you the whole story of this cornerback. This man arrived as Miami's first-round pick, number 30 in 2020. The Dolphins thought they had found their corner of the future, but things didn't go as expected. After 3 mediocre seasons in Miami, everyone thought his career was over. But you know what? Peters brought him in on a 1-year contract, basically telling him, show me you can still play. And Igbinoghene responded. He started 10 games for us in the regular season, was solid in coverage, and was a significant part of our playoff run. But here's the problem. He was vulnerable against the run. And now, looking forward, we have Marshawn Lattimore finally healthy. This man was all pro, one of the best cornerbacks in the league at his peak. We brought in Jonathan Jones, a veteran who has won 2 Super Bowls with New England. And we drafted Trey Amos in the 2nd round, a prospect many thought could go in the 1st. Where does Igbinoghene fit in all this? I believe his future depends on one thing: versatility. Because being the 5th best cornerback on the roster doesn't give you job security. But if he can prove he is valuable on special teams, if he can cover multiple positions, if he can be that player Dan Quinn can use in special packages, Peters will keep him. The problem is that Igbinoghene is already 26 years old. He's not a young prospect with infinite potential. He's a veteran who needs to prove he can contribute immediately. And the competition in the cornerback room is fierce. Every practice, every play in preseason, every moment on the field will be evaluated. But here comes the most interesting part. Percy Butler. Do you remember when everyone thought he would be cut for the salary cap after failing to consolidate as a starting safety? Well, it turns out Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. are in love with his leadership and the improvement they've seen in him during off-season training. Butler came as a fourth-round pick in 2021 from Louisiana. Washington selected him thinking he could be the future safety, but things didn't go as expected. He has been reliable on special teams, but when he has had opportunities in the defensive rotation, he hasn't met expectations. And you know what's the craziest part? That now, in the final year of his rookie contract, he's finally starting to show what the coaching staff wants to see. Quinn has said that Butler has made significant progress both on the field and in leadership, but do you think it's enough? I tell you, I'm not convinced, because here's the reality. We brought in Will Harris to replace Jeremy Chin. Harris is a veteran with experience, someone Quinn knows and trusts. Does that mean Butler will have fewer opportunities, or does it mean he will have to compete harder than ever? His future would depend on these next few months of training. If he can't prove he can be more than a special team specialist, if he can't show he can be a reliable contributor in the defensive rotation, this will be his last year in Washington. And at 25 years old, this might be his last real chance to establish himself as an NFL player. And when you thought we were done with complicated situations, we come to Noah Brown. Let me tell you the full story of this receiver because it's fascinating. Brown came to us last year after Houston cut him in September. Imagine that. A veteran receiver who couldn't make the Texans roster, who were desperate for help at the position. But you know what happened? Brown became one of the best acquisitions of the season. Not for the numbers, which were modest, but for the impact he had at key moments. His intelligence in route running, his ability to create pass interference, his game knowledge. He became that escape valve every quarterback needs. But do you know what the problem is? The injuries. Brown had to undergo kidney surgery during last season, an internal procedure that kept him out several weeks. And then he got injured in this year's mandatory minicamp, having to be carted off. Do you believe a 29-year-old receiver with a history of injuries will get another contract if he can't stay healthy? The competition in the receiver room is fierce. We have Terry McLaurin, of course, our WR1, who's likely to get an extension. We have Luke McCaffrey, Christian's brother, who's developing rapidly. We have Jalen Lane fighting for a spot. And now we have Deebo Samuel, whom we'll talk about shortly. But let's go on with Brian Robinson Jr., and here's where things get really interesting. Robinson is in the final year of his rookie contract, and I tell you the numbers don't lie. He's been a solid but not spectacular running back. And in today's NFL, if you're not spectacular, you get replaced. Let me put it in perspective. Robinson had 717 yards in 2022, 797 yards in 2023, and 792 yards in 2024. For a running back who's supposed to be our number one, getting the majority of the carries, that's not enough. And you know what's most concerning? That he hasn't improved consistently. And here's what Cliff Kingsbury tells me, that Robinson has come to these training sessions with more urgency, more intensity than ever. Why? Because he knows this is his last chance to prove he can be the franchise running back we need. If he doesn't reach 1,000 yards this season, if he can't prove he can handle 250 to 300 carries, Peters will look for options. And you know what's the craziest thing about all this? That paying running backs is becoming popular again in the NFL. Look at what happened with Josh Jacobs, with Saquon Barkley, with Derrick Henry. If Robinson proves he can be that 1,200 to 1,400 yard back, that he can stay healthy, that he can be a threat in the passing game, we might be talking about a 3 to 4 year extension worth $35 to $40 million. But if not, if he remains an 800 yard back, Peters will use an early draft pick on a running back, or he will look in free agency. And Robinson knows it. That's why he's training harder, showing up earlier, taking this year so seriously. The pressure on him is immense. Because it's not just about getting another contract, it's about validating that Peters was right in betting on him instead of looking for an immediate upgrade. And with an offensive line that should be better this year, there are no excuses. But here comes the news that really has me excited and can change everything. Deebo Samuel Sr. Do you remember when Peters shocked the world with that trade? Everyone said Samuel was coming with attitude problems, that he wasn't in shape, that he had a bad season in San Francisco, that he had issues with the coaching staff. And you know what? I tell you, they were wrong. Samuel has arrived in Washington with a chip on his shoulder bigger than the Washington Monument. He's been working tirelessly, has impressed in every practice, has been arriving early, staying late, and looks like the Samuel we knew when he was All-Pro. But do you understand the magnitude of what's at stake here? Samuel is in the final year of his contract, making about $23 million this season. He's one of the highest paid receivers in the league, but he's coming off a season where he had only 60 receptions for 892 yards. Those aren't $23 million numbers. This is a low-risk, high-reward gamble for Peters. If Samuel returns to his elite level, if he can have a season of 90-plus receptions, 1,200-plus yards, and 8-plus touchdowns, we're going to extend him. And probably for less money than he's making now, because he'll want to stay in a place where he's appreciated. But if not, if he remains inconsistent, if attitude problems resurface, it was a test year that didn't cost much. Peters only had to give a conditional 7th-round pick and assume Samuel's salary for one season. But you know what has me most excited? Samuel's versatility in Kingsbury's system is going to be lethal. He can play from the slot, can play outside, can run the ball from the backfield, can do reverses, can do screen passes. It's going to make Jaden Daniels' life much easier because it's going to create mismatches constantly. And here's what Samuel brings that no other receiver on our roster has: experience winning in January. The man has been in multiple playoffs, has won important games, knows what it takes to compete at the highest level. That's going to be invaluable for a young team trying to take the next step. Do you think it's a coincidence Peters made all these moves? No. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's creating competition, creating urgency, building a culture where no one's position is guaranteed. And that's precisely what a team needs if it wants to go from good to great. And here is what excites me the most. While all this is happening, while these 5 players are fighting for their careers, while Cosme is recovering from his injury, J.J. Watt is telling the world that our throwback uniforms should be permanent. Make them permanent, said the future Hall of Famer. And do you know what? Watt wasn't just talking about uniforms, he was talking about respect. Because when a player of J.J. Watt's caliber, someone who has played against every team in the league, someone who understands the history of football, tells you that your look is perfect, that means something. These uniforms are not just clothes. They're a statement. They represent our championship seasons of 1982, 1987, and 1991. They represent Art Monk, Darrell Green, Mark Rypien, all the greats who built the Burgundy and Gold tradition. And the fact that we're going to wear them against Dallas on Christmas is absolutely perfect. Can you imagine? Christmas night against our most hated rivals with uniforms that represent when we were the most dominant franchise in football. That's not just a game. That's a declaration that Washington is back. And Mark Klaus and Josh Harris get it. They're connecting the past with the present, honoring tradition while building for the future. Because these uniforms will be worn 3 times. Against Seattle in Week 9, against Denver in Week 13, and against Dallas on Christmas. But you know what's most important about all this? That these 5 players fighting for their careers will be part of that history. They'll have the opportunity to create new memories and uniforms that honor the greatest in our history. Do you think it's a coincidence that we're having all these conversations after reaching the NFC Championship game? No. It's because we finally have an organization that knows what it's doing. Peters isn't handing out contracts, he's making people earn them. Quinn isn't promising positions, he's making people compete for them. And that's what excites me most for this season. Not just because we have talent, but because we have hunger. Igbenogelt knows he has to prove he can be more than a depth corner. Butler knows he has to show he can be an impact player on defense. Brown knows he has to stay healthy. Robinson knows he has to reach 1,000 yards. Samuel knows he has to return to his all-pro form. And do you know what happens when you have a roster full of people fighting for their future? Everyone plays at a higher level. There's no complacency. Every practice, every play, every moment counts. The question is, how many of these 5 players will get extensions? How many will prove they deserve to stay? How many will be part of our long-term future? I tell you that the answer to those questions will determine whether we return to the championship game or go beyond. Because when you have Jaden Daniels developing as one of the best young quarterbacks in the league, when you have Dan Quinn establishing a winning culture, when you have Peters building smartly, you just need these players to take that extra step. What do you think? Which of these 5 players has the most to lose? Which has the most to gain? Do you think Peters will extend any of them before the season ends? Or will they wait until after the season to see what happens? And more importantly, do you think Sam Cosmi will be ready for the start of the season? Or will they have to start with Herbig or move Connolly to guard? Leave your comments below because I want to know what you think about all these situations. And if you believe Samuel will return to his all-pro form, like this video. If you believe Robinson will finally reach 1,000 yards, subscribe to the channel. If you think the throwback uniform should be permanent, share this video because this is just the beginning. This season is going to be different. It's going to be special, and you can't miss a single moment of what's coming. We're a family here. We're the most passionate community in the NFL, and together we're going to live every moment of this historic season. And remember, hail to the Redskins!